Good evening, friends. Today we are going to start a series of lectures in biostatistics. And the first topic which I'm going to discuss today is on study designs in medical research. All medical research focuses on objectives, and one should focus on the plan or design of research. Careful study design is the foundation of quality clinical research. And as David Sackett says, who is the father of evidence-based medicines, there are only a handful of ways to do study properly, but 1,000 ways to do it wrong. Whenever we come across a study designed or a study which is improperly done, we focus on two aspects: the design and the analysis. Improperly designed study can never be retrieved, whereas poorly analyzed study can always be reanalyzed. Consideration of design is important because that will govern how the data will be analyzed. So, what are the various categories of research designs? Based on the purpose of study, it can be observational or experimental, and based on how the data is collected, it can be prospective or retrospective, or another way, it can be longitudinal or cross-sectional. An observational study is one where the researcher collects information on the attributes or measurements of interest, but he does not influence the events. So, some of the common examples of observational studies are surveys and most epidemiological studies. For example, since I take up social pediatrics, one of the most common observational study is a national family health survey. A national family health survey, as you know, is a major demographic survey, and we have figures of National Family Health Survey 4, and currently NFHS 5 is going on. What it does is it collects information related to various biomarkers, and we all are aware that in NFHS we collect information related to hemoglobin, HIV, random blood glucose, blood sugar, BP, and the anthropometry. One of the other common observational study is just a simple descriptive study. For example, these days during the corona pandemic, there is one study which was recently published in May 2020 in children with COVID in pediatric emergency departments in Italy. So this confidence study involved a cohort of 100 Italian children younger than 18 years. So what was done was simply describing the cohort and comparing it with other cohorts. So the information was related to the proportions and the median age. So the description was given that nearly 12% of the children appeared ill. So this type of a description is an observational study. Similarly, an epidemiological study was published in March 2020 related to the COVID among children in China. So this again is an observational study. Other types of observational studies can be based on qualitative research. So this type of a study, which I was doing it with Manjinder, was related to the psychosocial burden and experiences of caregivers and children living with HIV. This was a mixed method study which had both the qualitative and the quantitative component. And here the data information is collected in the form of narratives. A simple information which we had collected was related to the 3 wishes of children. And as you can see in the word cloud, the font which is the largest shows that the most important wish which children had was going abroad. And we all know, because they came from Punjab, here many persons are actually staying in Canada. So this was the most common wish, and others being having a smartphone, car, or being a singer. So narrative information is collected in a qualitative study. This also is an observational study. So the categories of research design I said was observational or experimental. Experimental studies include the clinical trials and many animal and laboratory studies. We are not focusing for the purpose of our discussion today on the animal and the laboratory studies, although they are very important. The clinical trials, actually from them, stronger inferences can be made rather than from the observational studies. So while we were showing the various categories of research design. Now we move on to the next category, which is prospective or retrospective. This describes the way data is collected. So in prospective studies, the data are collected forward in time from the start of the study. Whereas in retrospective studies, it refers to the past event and may be acquired from the existing resources or by even interviews. So these are prospective and retrospective studies. One of the study which I had conducted had both the retrospective and the prospective component in the study design. This was related to the errors in filling of the WHO death certificate. So this was done by one of my students, Dr. Neeraj, who is a faculty right now in AIIMS Jodhpur. It collected information related to 1251 death certificates. Prospectively, only 34% was taken and 66% of the information was collected retrospectively. And what we found was only 11% of the death certificates were filled correctly. Now, another way of categorizing the research studies are longitudinal or cross-sectional. Again, it describes the way the data is collected. In longitudinal studies, observations are taken on more than one occasion. Clinical trials are usually longitudinal, whereas cross-sectional studies, the individuals are observed only once. Most surveys are cross-sectional studies. So one of the common example in pediatrics of a longitudinal and a cross-sectional study is the way we made our growth charts. The WHO growth charts, these were the multicentric growth charts. These were published in Acta Pediatrica way back in 2006. This study design combined the longitudinal study from birth to 24 months and a cross-sectional study of children aged 18 to 71 months. So in the longitudinal study, mothers and newborns were screened and enrolled at birth, and nearly 21 times the data points were collected. This included at week 1, week 2, 4 and 6 monthly, from 2 to 12 months, and every 2 months in their second year. So we had 21 data points which were collected longitudinally from birth to 24 months and cross-sectionally from 18 to 71 months. So these growth charts were collected from 6 centers. So it was a multi-centric study, and they are the sample size of nearly 8,500 children. So I will be discussing sample size calculations also in my subsequent talks. So WHO growth charts, as we've been using it in the Anganwadis or the clinical thing. So this I have taken from the Poshan Abhiyan, which also I've been discussing with you, the incremental learning approach. And this is the module 8, which talks about the WHO growth charts. So now we know this study design has both the longitudinal and the cross-sectional component. And this methodology, before it was published in a journal where only the methodology was published. So in 2004, in the Food and Nutrition Bulletin Journal, the methodology of this study, which is both longitudinal and cross-sectional, was studied. And we all know that these growth charts are prescriptive in approach. That means they were all breastfed babies, environmentally appropriate, so they had the best potential to grow appropriately. So again, coming back to the categories of research designs, we had an observational or an experimental study based on the purpose of the study, prospective or retrospective, longitudinal or cross-sectional, because it describes the way data is collected. I'm going back and forth so that you can memorize the categories of research design. So Lancet published series of papers in 2002. So that gave an overview of clinical research. So this was basically to make the clinician understand how to appraise the scientific literature. So according to that, the clinical research, how do we classify? First of all, it is important to understand, did investigators assign exposures? That means whether there was any active intervention by the researchers. If the answer to that is no, it means that it is an observational study. Then we try to see if there is any comparison group. Again, if the answer to that is no, then it is a non-analytic or a descriptive study. If the answer to that is yes, that means if there is a comparison group, then it is an analytical study. So then after that, we see the direction of the study. So there can be a forward-looking study, which we call it as a cohort study, or it can be a backward-looking study, which can be defined as a case-control study, or it can be a cross-sectional study, which is a current-looking study. In this, the exposure and the outcome occur at the same time. So on the other hand, we again ask if there has been an active intervention by the researcher, and if the answer to that is yes, then it is known as an experimental study. In experimental study, there are two types of trials. It can be an uncontrolled trial or it can be a controlled trial. In a controlled trial, if there has been a random allocation, then it is a randomized controlled trial. And if not, then it is a non-randomized controlled trial, also sometimes known as a quasi-randomized study. And this I will be discussing subsequently, a separate talk on a randomized controlled trials. So in this slide, I want you to understand when the time frame, both the exposure and the outcome, we need to see during which time frame it has occurred. So there is a past, it's a present and a future. Now you see, if the exposure is in the present and the outcome is in the future, then it is known as a prospective cohort study. If the outcome has already occurred, that means the person may be diseased or non-diseased. So if it has occurred, we go back in time and try to elicit information related to the exposure. In that case, it is a case control study. If both the exposure and the outcome have occurred at the same time, that means at the present, then it is a cross-sectional study. Sometimes we do have retrospective cohort studies. Normally, most of the times it is prospective cohort study. In a retrospective cohort study, the exposures, there is a historical cohort for which we have information related to the exposures. They are followed up in the present. So such a study can also be known as a historical cohort study. So here the information related to exposure is already recorded. The information is already there. So that type of a study is a retrospective cohort study. Now differentiating a case control study from a cohort study. The case control study proceeds from effect to cause, whereas cohort study proceeds from cause to effect. Case control study starts with a disease. That means the outcome has already occurred, whereas cohort study starts with a people exposed to a risk factor or a suspected cause. Usually, case control study is the first approach to testing hypotheses, whereas cohort study is reserved for testing precisely a formulated hypothesis. And in case control, a few number of subjects will suffice, whereas cohort study involves large number of subjects because there are chances of attrition as you follow up in time. Case control studies are usually provide quick results and are relatively inexpensive, whereas cohort studies take time and are expensive. For rare diseases, the case control study would be preferable. And cohort study is inappropriate when disease or exposure under investigation is rare. The case control study cannot yield information about diseases other than that selected for study, whereas cohort, because it's forward in time, can yield information about more than one disease outcomes. So now let me ask you a question. I, as a clinical researcher, want to do a study, and as most of you are pediatricians, I want you to plan a study on exposure to honey at birth and the outcome of botulism in infants. So you all are aware that honey is a very commonly used pre-lacteals in our setting. In one of the studies which I recently presented, 20% of our babies in our setting received honey as a pre-lactal feed. So we all are aware that honey should not be given to infants younger than 12 months, and recommendation is supported by major pediatric and public health organizations because honey may be a reservoir for Clostridium botulinum spores, which have been linked to the development of infant botulism. There are documented cases of honey ingestion and infant botulism. These were published in a journal in a pharmacotherapy in 2002. So now I want to plan a study design. So how do I go about it? I could plan a forward-looking or a prospective cohort study. So see, in a forward-looking, I select the study subjects. I get data on exposure to honey, which I can get the information on that, and I select a comparison group. These are the steps of doing a cohort study. But what do I know? That I will be following them up for the development of botulism. But botulism is a rare outcome. In my almost 3 decades of experience, I've rarely seen botulism. And even though I've suspected, I've not been able to prove. That means the outcome is extremely rare. So it will be very difficult for me to do a cohort study in view of this rare outcome which is there. So can I have another option? Can I plan a study design in another manner? Let me start by thinking that can I do a backward looking study or a case control study, because there is a rare outcome, and supposing we have some documented cases of infant botulism. So what we can do? We can select the cases and the controls. We can do matching, and when we have done that, retrospectively, we ask them for the exposure to honey. This would be far simpler and easier than to plan a cohort study, which would be expensive and very difficult, keeping in view the rare outcomes. So I'm not too sure whether we'll be able to do the study or not, but one thing I'm sure, in this case, the study which I recently did, giving pre-lactals to babies early, it impairs the early initiation of breastfeeding. So at least that thing can be prevented if we prevent pre-lactals to this. And we all are aware that breastfeeding within 1 hour is optimal. And waiting 1 day or more increases the risk of death more than 2 times. So friends, that study I always wondered that I can do and really prove for myself whether honey has some causality related to botulism, but still I'm not able to do that study. Another thing you need to know is that not all study designs are equal. D.L. Sackett, who has been the father of evidence-based medicine, he introduced the concept of pyramid or hierarchy of evidence to aid in teaching appraisal of scientific literature. Pyramid was designed to understand the concept that not all study designs are equal, but it is most applicable to questions about interventions. So on the base of the pyramid is the ideas, the editorials, the opinions, as we are having during the current corona pandemic. Lots of editorials, opinions are coming. After that is the case reports and case series. Higher up is a cross-sectional study. Still higher, a case control study, a cohort study, and a randomized control study, which is considered to be the gold standard. And if there are multiple randomized control studies, one can do a systematic review and meta-analysis to have the final answers. So what we can see up the pyramid is that the methodology becomes stronger, there is less bias, controls for comparison are there, and there are fewer studies on the top of the pyramid. So keeping in mind these days, there is a race to produce coronavirus vaccine. We're not talking about the preclinical trials, as I mentioned earlier, where it has to be tested on animals or animal cells. Once the scientists have proven that the virus vaccine isn't toxic, one can go ahead and test it in the humans. We did have a news sometime back saying that PGI had found a vaccine. But what we need to understand, it's not so simple. It takes time. What the news was related to the safety trial of a Mycobacterium W drug, which our director said was being conducted on 40 patients in our institute, AIMS Delhi and AIMS Bhopal. And this is a saprophytic cultivable mycobacterium sharing several antigens with Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It's basically an immunomodulator. And the studies have demonstrated that vaccination of mice with this Mycobacterium W protected the animals against subsequent tuberculosis. And addition of BCG and MW to chemotherapy actually helped in achieving faster bacteriological and histological response. So this wasn't a vaccine trial. So what are vaccine trials? We need to know that these are conducted in various phases. Phase 1 is around 20 to 30 participants, which tries to establish the safety and immune response of the vaccine. In the phase 2, the number of participants are around 100 to 300. And again, the vaccine safety, side effects, immune response are evaluated. The difference between phase 1 and phase 2 and subsequent phase 3 is that about the numbers. Phase 2 is a randomized control trial, and phase 2-3 also is a randomized control trial with numbers in thousands, up to 1,000 to 3,000 participants, and the data on vaccine efficiency and safety is collected. Once the vaccine retains safety and efficacy over a defined period, the manufacturer is able to apply to the regulatory authorities for a license to market the vaccine for human use. That means that is why it is going to take sometimes more than a year to have a vaccine trial. So these are the randomized control trials. And the phase 4 is a post-marketing surveillance. This is done after the vaccine has been introduced into the community, and this is an observational study. So we see that in this, there's a clinical trial, the randomized control trial, and an observational study, which is the study design. So what we need to understand as clinicians, clinical questions can be categorized either background or foreground. Background questions ask for knowledge about illness, disease, condition, processes, things, and these type of questions typically ask who, what, where, when, how, why. Just to take, for example, Corona. In Corona, what had happened? So, Corona, where was it? Where did it start? It started in Wuhan. How did it go? Probably pangolins were responsible for shift of virus from bats to humans. So these are the type of background questions. A forward questions inform clinical decisions. These questions typically concern a specific patient or a particular population. They tend to be more specific and complex compared to the background questions. Quite often they investigate comparisons such as two drugs, two treatments, two diagnostic tests, etc. So we have 4 types of foreground questions: the treatment, the diagnosis, prognosis, or the harm. So the therapy questions will be, in order to achieve a particular outcome, what type of drugs, vaccines, diets, counseling, etc. For diagnosis, for example, a person comes with the features, some specific symptoms. How do you diagnose? The questions of identification of COVID-19. Then there could be questions related to progression of corona infection and the likelihood of mortality. That means prognosis. Then the 4th type of question could be related to the harm or the etiology, just like questions of negative impact from an intervention. For example, a lot of questions were related to the harm due to hydroxychloroquine. So how do we put it in a format? Any clinical query or a question can be put according to the EBM, the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, into a PICO format. P stands for a patient or a population, I is for intervention or even an exposure, C for comparison, and O for outcome. The outcomes can be disease-oriented or patient-oriented. So the study which we planned was related to the honey. The population would be the term newborns. The intervention could be exposure to honey. C is the comparison. The comparator would be babies not receiving honey. And O would be the outcome. The outcome is development of botulism. So this is how we need to put clinical queries. We may not be able to do this study, and we may not be able to do a randomized controlled trial in this situation because of various ethical reasons. So now let me recapitulate the study designs. Did investigators assign exposures? So based upon an active intervention by researcher, we would say if it is no, then it is an observational study. If there is a comparison group, then it can be an analytical or a non-analytical study. If there is no comparison group, it's a descriptive or a non-analytical study. If there is a comparison group, it's an analytical, or it can even be said an inferential study. Then we look into the direction. If the direction is forward looking, it's a cohort study. If the direction is a backward looking, then it's a case control study. If it is current looking, that means both the exposure and outcome at the same time, it's a cross-sectional study. See, on the other arm, if there has been an active intervention by the researchers, then it is an experimental study. Again, the experimental studies can be of two types, an uncontrolled trial or a controlled trial. A controlled trial, if there is a random allocation, it's a randomized controlled trial. And if there is no random allocation, then it can be a quasi-randomized controlled trial or a non-randomized controlled trial. So I think with this slide, you can write your answer related to the study design, and most of the common study designs have been covered. For tomorrow's class, I will specifically focus on the analysis and interpretation. You must know the steps of cohort study, which are related to the selection of study subjects, obtaining data on exposure, selection of a comparison group, a follow-up, followed by analysis and interpretation. Whereas in case control study, the steps would be selection of cases and controls, matching, measurement of exposure, and analysis and interpretation. Both the analysis and interpretation I haven't covered today. So tomorrow I will be covering the exposure rates, the estimation of risks, relative risk, odds ratio, or the incidence rates. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, bye-bye. See you tomorrow.